can't just turn a blind eye to it because it's not happening in your own backyard. It affects our humanity. So we all have to care.
These words are the epitome of the shameless hypocrisy that all the election campaigns we are often bombarded with embody, with the sole aim of them to exude an air of power and moral high ground, and us to fall for it.
They are down, right? Yes, because the NHS was impacted by industrial action. And if it wasn't for that, 500,000 appointments would have been saved.
It's somebody else's fault.
What would you do about the doctor strikes that Rishi Sunak raised?
Who built the cages,
Let's
Joe?
talk about what we're talking about. What happened? Parents were ripped, their kids were ripped from their arms and separated. And now they cannot find over 500 sets of those parents, and those kids are alone. Nowhere to go. Nowhere to go. It's criminal. It's criminal.
Why didn't you do that 4 years ago?
And we continue to be engulfed with promises of protection, especially of us women. The protection of our rights amid the debilitating misogyny that Western politicians, especially female ones, are always eager to defend.
Dear friends, I'm glad to join you at the Women Political Leaders Summit today. It is inspiring to be among so many female parliamentarians from across the world to discuss a topic which could not be more timely. I have been the first woman in a job several times in my life, as so many of you have also been. But what about the millions of women who do not have this advantage? Women who are heard every day in every corner of our planet, but hold neither the power nor the office to speak up. We have to make sure that their stories are also told and then acted upon.
Then Baroness Hale, who was in charge of the legislation in British family courts for almost a decade, the very courts where thousands of severely abused women and children seek justice and protection. Again, there comes that sublime achievement of being the first.
In the land, and to her name she has a string of firsts, from being the first person at her North Yorkshire school to go to Cambridge to read law, to being the first female president of the Supreme Court. And there's a string of astonishing accomplishments along the way, which she has written about now that she has stepped down from her formal duties, and it is called Spider-Woman.
Judges are not political animals. We are not party politicians. We are not selected in this country because of our party politics.
Mind my new voice. And the female political power continues, as healthy as I am today.
It is a public service, which is one of the first duties of a government, to have a justice system that functions.
Do our politicians realise that?
I think they probably don't.
This week, I'm speaking with Lady Hale of Richmond. Brenda Hale is perhaps the judge best known to the general public. She's the first woman to become president of the UK Supreme Court.
Michelle Obama is the first African-American First Lady. She will always go down in history for that, and she will always be seen as a pioneer for others to follow.
I know that one of the issues that we have both here in New Zealand and much more broadly is that women's confidence in themselves to do a job can be a barrier, as alongside many of the other very real barriers that exist.
That my daughters are growing up in a country where women being equally represented in public life is just normal. That's a great thing.
I think it's hugely significant for New Zealand. You know, our strides towards gender equality have been big in New Zealand over the last few years. We've got a female Governor-General, Prime Minister, Chief Justice, and now we have 50% parliamentarians.
By a woman now has more female lawmakers in Parliament than male. Only 5 other countries, among them Rwanda, can boast that achievement.
The major milestone came as New Zealand's Soraya Peke-Mason walked into the country's parliament this week.
Ko ahau, ko Soraya Peke-Mason.
Sworn in to replace the outgoing speaker and stepping into the history books.
If not the first, certainly close to the first generation of professional women whose husbands ended up, in charge of governments. And up until then, there had been a kind of expectation that there was a role to be filled, and it was largely to be seen but not heard, and not to do anything independently. And I remember I was very impressed how you really were determined to keep doing what you'd spent a lifetime preparing to do, which was to represent clients, stand up and speak out. And it was really brave, Cherie. Very difficult, but brave.
I am not as bright as all these women are, and I am not successful. And I do not have a successful man in my life, or any man. But I've been fighting tooth and nail to fight for justice by collecting these videos that I struggle to edit, even when I'm really ill, with sinus inflammation, cough, high temperature, and broken voice. It means that I'm the first woman ever to do that. So I deserve a plaque. And my, according to some feminists I've read, backwards teenage daughter has disempoweringly cooked chicken soup and dough balls in melted garlic butter, all from scratch for me. It's very brave. It means that by proxy she is also fighting for justice, as the first woman ever to do that. And our cat, a minnow, has been keeping me company. And she's a girl, and the first girl cat to ever do that. That's brave too. It means that we deserve 3 plaques for being the first women ever to do all this.
What an honor to be here with you today among women who have blazed the trail for so many other women. Dr. Ebadi, for decades you have fought for women's rights in Iran. They tried to silence you. They put you in jail. They forced you into exile. But you kept fighting with bravery, day in, day out. You are amazing, and we thank you for your leadership. It is outstanding what you've done. Today, countless women have joined in your fight, and the whole world stands in awe of the women of Iran. More and more women are choosing to defy the prohibitions of a regime that does not see them as equal. They too are blazing a trail for their sisters, their mothers, their daughters, for all the people of Iran. We have a duty to set an example to society and the economy of what a world of fair chances looks like.
They are all of us. They are my daughters, and they are you. I cannot wait to see all the doors we will open all the fortunes and futures we transform for girls across the globe. So you guys ready to get to work? You think we can get this done? All right, thank you all so much. God bless. All the young women, they're right here. I like that. Oh, hugs to you guys. You guys are on fire, right? Well, good evening, everyone. I want to recognize Fortune's 50 most powerful women and all the other brilliant, powerful, accomplished women and a few brave men gathered here tonight. And young women. Are you all here at one table? Oh, I'm so proud of you. The women in the room, you run companies that are transforming industries. You lead organizations that are changing people's lives, and by shattering just about every glass ceiling imaginable, you all have shown us that a woman's place is truly wherever she wants it to be.
There is one message that echoes forth from this conference. Let it be that human rights are women's rights and women's rights are human rights once and for all.
Former First Lady Laura Bush. She's here to talk about a new book called We Are Afghan Women, Voices of Hope. She wrote the introduction and launched the efforts to get it published. The book includes Afghan women's accounts of their successes, their triumphs, despite great adversity there. It's a topic that Mrs. Bush has been fiercely passionate about since her time in the White House. Mrs. Bush, good morning to you.
Good morning, Savannah.
You are so invested in these women and these stories, and I actually thought it was so striking in your introduction. You said in 6th grade you actually wrote an essay about Afghanistan.
That's right. When I was in 6th grade, I chose Afghanistan as the most exotic, faraway country, never expecting that I would actually visit Afghanistan, and people saw how women were treated. And American women especially wanted to do something to help our sisters in Afghanistan.
This is a collection of stories. Some of these women you know personally.
Yes.
And some of them have been through unimaginable tragedy.
Good morning and welcome to the George W. Bush Presidential Center. A very warm welcome to our First Ladies that have joined us today. Charity is the one who thought of all of this, conceived every bit of it, and is really, here she is, and has guided all of our women's programs that we've done from the Bush Institute since the founding of the Bush Institute. Thank you for your excellent work and your creative vision and for all of your efforts to improve the lives of women and girls. But women will lead the democracy movement. The Bush Institute's Afghan Women's Project supports effective programs in Afghanistan. We're highlighting the success of Afghan women by telling their stories and publishing them in a book titled We Are Afghan Women. One of those stories is that of Razia John, who's here with us today. Razia is a remarkable Afghan woman who risked her own life by running an underground school during the years of the Taliban.
9th day into me being unwell, and with chest infection now accessorizing my pesky afflictions, I'm still investing my broken voice into giving justice a deserving voice.
Women's rights? What's the point? What if I were to tell you there was one surefire way of growing the global economy? That there is a vast opportunity that is being underused in every single country across the globe. That opportunity is women. McKinsey estimates that closing the gender gap in economic activity could boost global GDP by an additional $28 trillion by 2025. The smart economics argument has gained huge traction in recent years, with everyone from the UN to the private sector linking gender equality with financial reward, myself included.
Across the world, women are shut out of the labour market, confined to insecure, poorly paid work, and forced to shoulder a massively disproportionate burden of care work, all because of their gender. Underlying all of this is a fundamental belief that women aren't as capable or qualified as men. This sexist belief is outdated and dangerous.
Well, thousands of us in the UK and other Western countries have been human trafficked into marriages and motherhood on the foundations we never consented to. We were beaten, psychologically tormented, deprived of basic sustenance when pregnant, raped, neglected as the fathers of our children hated family life, cheated on from the start and throughout our pregnancies, were not allowed by our tormentors to build our dreams, study, start businesses, etc. Yet instead of us being helped and protected in family courts, our abusers have been awarded child custody of the children they so badly let down, and some of us have had our divorce settlement stolen by legal professionals, many of whom are women, so that we, bereft and destitute, and us foreign moms all alone in the country, could never stand on our feet and recover. We were then court gagged. Cherie Blair and all other Western First Ladies et al. Have, as far as I know, never replied to our pleas for help. Definitely not to my hundreds of letters, 25 years on, while laughing all the way to their banks.
As well as stunting economic growth, it limits the dreams, aspirations, and potential of millions of women and girls across the world. Let's fight because it's the right thing to do.
For her exceptional courage and perseverance to break the silence around early and forced marriage, and for being a role model for other girls who suffer needlessly from this harmful practice. Charmaine?
Our innocent families are crying out to live in safety. We must continue to fight injustice in all its forms, in whatever scale or shape it takes in our lives.
Put women and girls at the center of everything we do here at the State Department and in the Obama administration. And I want to publicly thank her for being an inspiration for women and girls and families and communities here in the United States and around the world. It's always an honor to share a stage with her. And what Michelle and I have tried to do in our own ways is to lift up the voices of others, because we want a great crescendo of voices.
To the extraordinary, to the young and old, people of all social structure. As a leader, she illustrates very clearly that you can be powerful, very powerful indeed, without being aloof, without imposing, and without being aggressive. It is my privilege, with these words, and my immense pleasure to introduce to you one of the beautiful daughters of our times, one of the most inspiring leaders of the world today, who have already traced the path of what it is to be a woman of modern times, of our 21st century, Mrs. Michelle Obama.
If you strike a woman, you strike a rock. You can be the generation that holds your leaders accountable for open, honest government at every level. Government that stamps out corruption and protects the rights of every citizen to speak freely, to worship openly, to love whomever they choose. You can be the generation to ensure that women are no longer second-class citizens. I want to recognize most of all the 10 women of courage that we're honoring here today. These women come from all different corners of the globe. They have taken very different journeys to this moment. But they are all here today because somewhere along the line, they decided they could no longer accept the world as it is. And they committed themselves to fighting for the world as they know it should be. They saw corruption and they worked to expose it. They saw oppression and they worked to end it. They saw violence, poverty, discrimination, and inequality. She will not give up, and she will never, ever allow her voice to be silenced. And it is the same message that all of these women are sending with every act of courage they commit. The message that injustice will not stand, that inequality will not be tolerated, and that they will not stay silent in the face of evil.
These women are working very hard. And yes, we can give them all of the verbal support, we can give them all of the honors, but until we continue to make it possible for them to work through resources, their issues will continue to be issues for politicians to use to make themselves look good when it's elections time.
This is special day for all of us, special day for all the women around the world, for all the women, especially in Arab countries after Arab Spring.
Which Tawakul, who's been on the front lines of the struggle for freedom and democracy in Yemen. It is so humbling to see the progress that you are making. While it's a struggle for many women in Afghanistan to have their voices heard, Mariam Durrani is working to make sure that women's voices are not only heard, but amplified and broadcasted. Them. She remains a strong voice for freedom of expression and women's inclusion as the Libyan people chart the course for their country's future. 11 years in a Burmese prison could not silence Zin Marong. Her life's work has been promoting democracy, women's rights, and conflict resolution in Burma. Built her career in Colombia as a reporter seeking out tough assignments and going to great lengths to uncover the truth.
But the challenges our nation faced only inspired you to fight harder for democracy, universal rights, and the rule of law in all the places you serve. The President and Secretary Blinken are going to make sure that your faith is rewarded. And America will lead because you are forging the way. When we hear of the stories of the women we honor today, it's easy to think of them as mythical heroes or angels among us, perhaps touched by the gods or chosen for greatness. What else could explain such Herculean acts of fortitude and fearlessness?
Wilson Center Now, a production of the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars. I'm John Molesky. My guest today is Marissa Kurma, and Marissa serves as project manager for Middle East Special Initiatives at the Wilson Center. One of those special initiatives is a terrific blog, En Hudwana, and in the most recent collection of articles inspired by the theme of International Women's Day, we have lots to talk about. Many great contributors.
Right, it is a chicken and egg situation. Well, I think most of the women leaders who contributed to this blog this year had fun with this discussion, because this is at the heart of the work they do on the ground in the Middle East and North Africa region. There are some that believe that changing laws is essential, because there are many laws, particularly when it comes to the family code or family laws, that are still quite discriminatory against women. So this is essential because you need the law to protect women's rights.
Do we? Or that is only valid for the Middle East?
But at the same time, you need to ensure that these laws are being implemented. And sometimes, the barrier is a cultural mindset. And most of these countries are conservative countries. The cultural context is conservative.
And the mindset of the Western elite underclass is extremely liberal, and their filth is imposed upon us all, resulting in many with basic moral values not being able to have a family life or any control over their own bodies, that are freely and legally sexually exploited for unconsented to functions. So it is the other extreme. So those are two extremes that oppress fellow human beings and hinder their deserving right to a personal life of their own choosing. What exactly is the difference then? There is immense suffering and destroyed lives on both sides, and both are legally abetted. One of them by yourselves.
And so you need a lot more work at the grassroots level beyond just Parliament and changing laws. They're very important now with social media, with film, and just changing images or through caricatures, changing images of what women look like or what women should be doing. I think that makes a huge difference. And role models. We need more women who are at the top to talk about their own stories. And that's pretty much the point of Enadwana as a blog. It's to give these women a platform to talk about the work that they're doing and to slowly start breaking barriers.
So we're here to talk about the work you're doing to end child marriage, along with Amal Clooney and Melinda French Gates. Why is that an issue that's important to you personally?
I've said this time and time again. I see myself in the girls that we're fighting for. I see my daughters in those girls. If we just put ourselves in those girls' shoes and think of how would we feel if it were us or our daughters that were married off at the age of 12 or 10 or however old, and their dreams, their opportunities and aspirations were cut off completely, married to an older man, forced to start having children way before their time. Any of us would be outraged at the thought. And
we don't have an international system that can prevent this type of behavior against women and against girls, then at least we should try and punish it when it happens, and through punishment try to deter it. But the large-scale international organizations that we have that are supposed to be dealing with this, like the UN Security Council, like powerful governments, are not delivering. And so I think philanthropy then and individual lawyers can play and have to play a larger role. A war, and one of the things that we see in Malawi is it's not so much about changing the law on paper, because actually Malawi's laws are fairly progressive when it comes to girls' rights. But it's about access to justice, where, what's the point of having a beautiful constitution that protects, girls from child marriage if the girls who are the victims of this don't know about it? So we formed a network of mobile legal aid clinics, which means literally there's a van that goes out with lawyers, and we go out in a community and say to girls, these are your rights, and if you need a lawyer for free to protect you, that's what we are here to provide.
It's illegal to marry under the age of 18 in Malawi, but since the law was introduced 6 years ago, there have been very few prosecutions.
This is actually the first time we've been able to reach this part of Malawi. We are focusing on child marriage because the message was you should have the choice. And I said, you should decide whether to have a family, when to have a family. Who you want to marry, whether what kind of work you want to do. And they were very ambitious, and I was really impressed with them. So
if we can come together as a threesome, we're going to get, instead of 1 + 1 + 1 = 3, we're going to get 1 + 1 + 1 has this multiplier effect of 6, 7, 8, 9, because we're working in collective, doing the same strands of work, but also putting them together.
That is the exact modus operandi the evil in power who abuse human rights use. Being superbly globally connected, with the like-minded, with a common yet also self-serving goal of having the almighty ownership of humanity, while also by being ruthless, manipulative, and aggressively threatening on top of it all.
Yes, we can use our platform, we can get people to see the issue, but it really comes down to these grassroots organizations.
And the gravy train never stops. And yes, it is a very hard choice to make. Do you try and give millions of destroyed lives around you a voice? Or you keep quiet to appease the male sociopaths in power who have you in their hands, and amass mind-shattering fame and personal wealth for yourself and your own family? That's one hell of a conundrum.
When I started thinking about who has had some of the greatest impact on the global vision of what health and wellness and empowerment looks like, this person's name came to mind first. Brooklyn, please welcome our WW 2020 Visionary Conversation, the former First Lady of the United States, Michelle Obama! It's fun, eh? Look at this! Look at this! Look at this, Brooklyn!
2018, the United Kingdom's most senior judge is a woman. The Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police is a woman. The Director of the National Crime Agency is a woman. Women serve as England's Chief Fire Officer and Chief Medical Officer. The CBI and the TUC are both headed by women. At Holyrood, a female First Minister debates against a female opposition leader. In the National Assembly for Wales, a woman leads the third party. The two largest parties in Northern Ireland are led by women. And at Westminster, where suffragettes chained themselves to statues and hid in a broom cupboard on census night, the leaders of the House of Commons and the House of Lords are women. See you all here today. Today we celebrate. We celebrate a huge and irreversible step towards creating a truly universal democracy and the beginning of a representative public debate. But I also want to take this opportunity to reflect on the nature of our public life today. As we remember the heroic campaigners of the past, who fought to include the voices of all citizens in our public debate, we should consider the values and principles that guide our conduct today and how we can maintain a healthy public debate for the future. For while there is much to celebrate, I worry that our public debate today is coarsening, that for some it's becoming harder to disagree without also demeaning opposing viewpoints in the process.
We have, in the case of Poland, for the first time ever, actually be very clear here. The Commission has already taken decisive and also swift action, but let us not forget that we are in the area of legal proceedings here, which require certain steps, which require certain deadlines, where we have to follow certain procedures, and that we are doing, and you can be assured that the Commission will continue to take decisive action also in the future. Let me underline that we have sometimes taken unprecedented steps to address the serious threats to the rule of law in Poland. We have been using and will continue to use all the tools available.
Well, this concerns a European Court of Justice ruling from earlier this year, where the court said that this new judicial review tribunal set up by the Polish government violates judicial independence, and it's seen as being part of a wider effort by the Polish government to dismantle the independence of the...
The text is brief. ECJ Vice President orders Poland to pay a fine of €1 million a day because it's failed to suspend a disciplinary chamber of its Supreme Court. That order was made in July. Even before the latest action, the governing party of Poland accused the EU of blackmail. The $1.2 million fine from Brussels coincided with a harsh warning from Belgium's Prime Minister aimed at Polish leaders.
We are playing with fire when waging war with our European colleagues for internal political reasons. This is about an overwhelming majority of member states, from the Baltics to Portugal, who agree our union is a union of values, not a cash machine. You cannot pocket all the money, but refuse the values.
I am deeply concerned about continued actions that undermine judicial independence in Poland. Despite the rulings of the European Court of Justice and our numerous attempts to remedy the situation, the pressure on judges continues to increase. This is why we have decided to again refer Poland to European Court of Justice and ask for interim measure. I am particularly concerned about the actions of the disciplinary chamber that continues to be used as an element pressuring judges. We expect the chamber to stop its operations immediately, and we request the suspension of its decisions already taken, especially when it comes to the lifting of judicial immunity.
Merits-based process. That is very important to always keep in mind. So it is in the hand of the country that wants to join the European Union how fast this process is, because it is, as I said, in its hands to do the necessary reforms. But also important is the alignment with our common security and foreign policy. So this goes hand in hand, because joining the European Union in the very end means sharing the same values, having the same direction in the geopolitical decisions, and therefore a strong alignment with our common foreign and security policy. And we want to count on you, on Serbia, as a reliable partner, because it's for us important that together we defend our common values and our common principles.
This session was very
important actually for human rights work in Serbia, because this was the opportunity to provide the committee with information about the state of human rights in Serbia in regards specific issues that are very important for human rights organizations and actually for civil society in general. Most of the issues that the committee actually engaged with were related to pressing issues related to the media freedoms, freedom of expression, campaign against journalists and investigative reporters, and in some cases even against national human rights institutions. Then some other issues that are very important for human rights in Serbia are migrant crisis, then Roma rights, then there were a lot of issues related to the judiciary and independence of judiciary. So all of these actually are very important for our work back in Belgrade, and the committee was engaging with the state actually in this dialogue.
The president of the Greens in the European Parliament, who has been an ardent supporter of media freedoms, said during a visit to today's Zeman on Wednesday that judicial independence in Turkey is in peril given all the developments that have taken place in the past year. Turkey must overcome its problems with the rule of law, Harms stated in reference to the cases of arrested judges and prosecutors in addition to numerous dismissed prosecutors. Saying that dismissing prosecutors is normally a rare practice, Harms noted too many people in Turkey are accused of the same charge of allegedly being a member of the parallel structure. The parallel structure is a term invented by then Prime Minister and current President Recep Tayyip Erdogan to refer to followers of the Gulen movement, also known as the Hizmet movement, particularly followers within the state bureaucracy, such as the Ministry of Justice. Harms believes that the imprisonment of Karaka is a political case. According to her, the pressure on the media in Turkey is ongoing, given the various court cases against journalists. I am kept up to date about developments.
Great anxiety that if Turkey becomes a full member of the EU, what will happen to women's rights? So I think this is very important to address. And here again, it was fascinating to see there was a major improvement in legislation in 2004 when it comes to women's rights. For example, the rights within a marriage, the way that punishment for the so-called honor crimes were enhanced. And this was mainly due to civil society.
Lord Sumption said Hong Kong was at risk of becoming a totalitarian state if it continued to apply the national security law.
The difficulty is, first of all, the national security law itself and a distinct colonial law against sedition, which are extremely illiberal. They could have been applied much more moderately than they have been. Secondly, there is the problem that under the basic law, if China doesn't like the court's decisions, they can reverse them by what is called an interpretation, although it's usually just a legislative intervention from the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress in Berlin. It was initially unclear how frequently this would be used, but recent incidents have indicated that the Chinese are determined to use this provision in order to ensure that its opponents lose.
And today, Charles Michel and I clearly underlined that respect for fundamental rights and the rule of law are crucial for the European Union. This must be an integral part of our relationship. Turkey must respect international human rights rules and standards, to which, by the way, the country has committed itself as a founding member of the Council of Europe. I am deeply worried about the fact that Turkey withdrew from the Istanbul Convention. This is about protecting women and protecting children against violence, and this is clearly the wrong signal right now.
Four out of 10 women in Turkey have experienced violence,
And when it can't get worse, well, then Turkey's government says they withdraw from the Istanbul Convention, which guarantees legal protection for women who are victims of violence. So this is 10 years after Turkey's ratification of the convention in Istanbul itself. This is a scandal. This is an enormous assault against women's legal rights. And we have to condemn this when we've seen this from the Council of Europe, from the US. So we have to make demands in our relationship with Turkey that we can't tolerate this, and Turkey has to rejoin the convention. And I really hope that this debate can lead to increasing the pressure both on the EU's leadership and on Turkey's leadership.
See Erdogan flying in the face of freedom, cracking down on women's rights and the rights of the people of Turkey. These seem to be news items from different places, but if our continent is to improve its relations with Turkey, how can this go hand in hand with Erdogan having a free hand to sweep human rights under the carpet and undermine rights and freedoms?
Madam Commissioner, first and foremost, I would like to express my solidarity with Turkish women who are protesting against this deprivation of rights and protection. We are appalled by what Turkey is doing, but let us look closer at home. Poland, a member state, is a step away from following suit, but the EU is doing nothing.
This decision to withdraw Turkey from the Istanbul Convention, this decision legitimizes violence against women. It legitimizes a kind of violence which affects almost 40% of the female population in Turkey. This is violence. In 2019, killed almost 500 women. And this is violence that has to be stopped. Since this decision was announced, brave women in Turkey have gone out into the streets in protest. They need our support. They need our solidarity. And they need clear criticism of Erdogan from the EU leaders. This attack against female rights has to be condemned. Women are being abused, killed, so the EU has to act.
Country to sign it, and that is why it bears the name of Istanbul. Since then, more and more countries have ratified this convention. We have always been in the EU in the forefront of the fight against violence against women, and this instrument is the most important one that we have to try to fight this social scourge and attack these shameful acts of violence throughout the world. Human rights and protection thereof is an intrinsic value of the EU as our fundamental rights, and unfortunately recently, the Turkish government has abandoned the Istanbul Convention on spurious reasons, deliberately misunderstanding it. This is an assault on human rights and tramples underfoot women's rights. It also will mean more victims and less democracy.
Madam President, as a rapporteur on Turkey, there are 2 points I'd like to focus on: decisions running counter to democratic rights and the timing of this withdrawal. We need to keep democratic conditionality in our relations with Turkey. An activist for human rights had immunity withdrawn.
By withdrawing from this, Turkey is turning its back on equality between men and women, which is one of the fundamental values of European civilization. As a symbol, this withdrawal is a declaration of war that should concern us.
After deciding to withdraw from the Istanbul Convention, you might argue that Erdogan does not care about this brutal violence against women. But actually, it is worse. Autocrats like Erdogan and his lookalikes in the European Union are afraid of free and independent women.
On top of that, Turkey justifies the withdrawal by attacking the LGBTI community, an open violation of sexual liberty. The European Union should show zero tolerance to the Turkish government, which day by day becomes more authoritarian and more disrespects the fundamental human rights. We need to make all necessary steps in order to provide strong protection and promotion of the rights and freedoms of women and LGBTI community.
No less than 1 in 5 women have been confronted with domestic violence in the last few months. At this very moment, Turkey decides to withdraw from the convention. So I really urge the Commission to give a very clear signal on this to Turkey, and also to set a good example by ensuring that the remaining member states are encouraged to ratify the convention so that European ratification will no longer be blocked. Colleagues, how long do we have to wait to do what has to be done?
But when Erdogan wants to satisfy his supporters with their medieval mindsets and find a new way of provoking the EU, a country which will never be a member of the EU, then he sacrifices his women's health, safety, well-being, and freedom. And it's sickening to witness this. And I think this disgust should help us to speed up our efforts to work against Erdogan.
In one voice, the world declared, human rights are women's rights, and women's rights are human rights.
This year, in considering the status of women, especially as it pertains to the participation of women in decision-making, we must also consider the status of democracy. At its best, democracy protects human rights, promotes human dignity, and upholds the rule of law. It is a means to establish peace and shared prosperity. It should ensure every citizen, regardless of gender, has an equal voice, and free and fair elections that will respect the will of the people. At the same time, democracy requires constant vigilance, constant improvement. It is a work in progress.
Congratulate my right honourable friend and welcome her to her position as the third female. Can I ask my right honourable friend, why does she think it is that all 3 female prime ministers have been Conservative?
I thank my right honourable friend for her fantastic question. I look forward to calling on her advice from her time in office as I start my work as Prime Minister. It is quite extraordinary, isn't it, that there doesn't seem to be the ability in the Labour Party to find a female leader, or indeed
We are here for the United State of Women! Now, I know you all have had a busy, packed, full day, very inspiring, right? And hopefully our conversation will live up to the hype.
Now, let us see if all these women's rights warriors rescuing women all over the world, and some of them pocketing surreal sums of money and a plethora of superlative connections for their offspring as a consequence of their prominent roles of power and unparalleled courage, have truly lived up to their hype that they've been loudly feeding us with for decades.